So today we're going to be covering how to kickstart your VC success. Okay. And your venture capital is a combination of your track record, vision, and network, right? Especially when you're starting a firm, but even after you've started a firm and you're on your second or third fund, your track record, vision, and network are what will define how successful you are. And I'm going to talk about each of those things. I'm going to put them all together in a formula for you to think about how to optimize them. And then I'm going to tell you tips and techniques to optimize them right now, even if you don't have a firm. Okay. So let's start with track record, because track record it doesn't have to be an investing track record. It doesn't have to be a track record even in startups. But what it has to be, or what it is what you have accomplished to be taken seriously. And it's not just taken seriously anywhere, it's taken seriously in the market and segment that you're focusing on. Now, some people may have amazing accomplishments. They may take a company public, or, done something equally amazing. And that can give you just overall credibility, where you don't need credibility in a particular market segment because your credibility is so great to begin with. And that can happen. But for most people that don't have some amazing, outstanding accomplishment in their background, you will have things that you've done in a market segment that are impressive. So you want to find those things that you have done that make you impressive, particularly in a market segment, because most modern venture capital firms are specialist firms, not generalist firms. And so specialist firms will focus on a segment, and in that segment that the firm is focused on, the manager has to have track record that gives them credibility. And some examples of track record, the obvious ones are, well, I've invested in this segment and I've gotten great returns. So I put $2 million into 10 deals, and now that $2 million is worth $100 million. So I've got a 50x. Well, wow, if you've got a 50x in a market segment, you've got great track record. No one will argue about your track record whatsoever. Okay, so that's obvious. But there are lots of ways to have track record, right? Besides investing, you could run the leading community of experts in that area. So if you're in AI, you could have, run the community of AI, algorithm engineers, and you could have 100 of the best AI algorithm engineers in your community, and that would give you great credibility, possibly as great credibility as getting the 50x, right? So again, just before I go through some other examples, I want to make it very clear that track record does not just have to be investing. It can be anything that gives you credibility in that market segment. So another example, beyond investing, beyond maybe a community, is that you've started a leading company in the field. And maybe that company didn't go public, but it exited, or it's still operating and it's very big, and you are one of the co-founders and you're stepping out now to do a fund. So you're operational as a founder, but you could also be operational in other roles. Like you could be the leading BD person in a segment, right? I've done this deal, I've done that deal. You could be a service provider, you could be a banker, for example. So I was the top banker in this segment. So there are lots and lots of ways that you can have relevant track record, but really your job is to find the one that's best for you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment on how you figure that out. But and you're going to need to test that, and I'll talk about that as well. Okay. So beyond track record, you need vision, right? So now you say, okay, I'm credible in this market segment, and I also have a vision on how I'm going to create returns in that market segment. And there are lots of ways to do this, right? Just deploying money is if the segment is growing and big, we'll talk about how to quantify that in a moment. If you're deploying money into it and the segment is creating money because it's growing, then just deploying money is enough of a vision. But a lot of times you want to add a little bit more, and you'll do something and say, because of my track record doing business development in this segment, I will deploy money in the segment and add help with my BD skills. And that money and help is your vision on how you will make great returns and create value in the market segment. So a lot of times your vision involves your track record and deploying money to create these outsized returns, because any limited partner that you work with can take their money and invest in the segment as well. So why are they giving you the money? Well, you have a vision of how you can take money and components of your track record and combine those to have a force multiplier that will get better returns than just deploying capital without the vision, without the track record, without your network and exposure, which we'll go into next. So the third component of success in venture capital, beyond your track record, beyond your vision, is your network. And I can't stress this enough. If you come and you apply to VC Lab and your network has, let's say on LinkedIn, 800 people in it, that is a really, really small network, okay? Just maybe you read in something, oh, LinkedIn says that's a big network. No. VC is a networking business. It's literally, that's what it is, right? You use your network to get limited partners, okay? You use your network to get founders that come to you with their companies. You use your network to get help for the founders that come to you. You're using your network all day long. And so and for everything that you do. So it's mission critical that you have a good network. And obviously you could have a very, very, very large network, like 100,000 followers, or we've seen 1 million followers on LinkedIn. Okay. And if your network is that large, you probably have pretty good sub networks in a lot of different industries. But most of the people that we see, even including very successful people, have 10,000 and less followers on LinkedIn, right? So maybe 2,000, maybe 4,000, maybe 5,000. And if you start getting bigger and bigger, maybe 10,000, okay? When you're at those smaller levels, 10,000 and below, your network is going to have a concentration points, right? They're going to be people that follow you that are in a segment or a series of segments, or in one market and a few segments, right? And so that's the network that you're going to bring to bear for your venture capital firm, right? Whatever you have today, usually depicted in LinkedIn, but there are other places that you have networks as well. You might have a network on Twitter, though it was funny. I was talking with a top VC the other day, And his literal words, he's one of the top VCs in the world, was, we've been scouting for new partners and we've been looking at Twitter, and we've come to realize that your network on Twitter is not at all correlated to your success as a venture capitalist. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. But so there are definitely platforms where your network is better represented, like LinkedIn, and platforms where your network may be worse represented, like Twitter. But either way, regardless of what network and what thing you're, or what platform you're measuring your network on, you're in the business of networking. All right, venture capital is a networking business, so size matters, and your depth of network in a particular industry segment really, really matters, because you're going to be focusing on an industry segment. So if you say, for example, I have a great track record in this area, let's say AI, and I have a great network, let's say in AI, but you go do health tech where you don't have a network and you don't have a track record, it just won't work, right? Because you need track record and you need network in that market segment that you're focusing on. And so it's sort of like a Venn diagram, right? Your fund is at the intersection of vision, track record, and network, okay? And you're bringing your vision in, you're bringing your network in, you're bringing your track record in, and you're going to create this fund. And so your vision is how you get the returns. Your track record is how you get the limited partners, the money to invest, the OPM, other people's money, right? And then the network is also how you get limited partners, but that's mainly how you're going to get founders, mainly how you're going to get help for founders, okay? So this is sort of a visualization, if you will, of how these things interplay. And so if you're getting started to launch a firm or a fund, and maybe you have a firm and you're launching a new fund, right? You want to really ask yourself, hey, in what market segments have I really added the greatest value in the past? And you may even have done a fund before and it maybe didn't return that well. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, like, let me really think about this. Where have I added the greatest value in the past, right? And then that's not enough, unfortunately, because you could have been like the best person in fax machines, but fax machines are a horrible market. And so you don't want to be investing in fax machines, right? You want to be investing in something else. So you need to look at what's the potential of the markets where you've added value in. So for most competent people who are in a position to start a venture capital firm, they have added value in their career in a few different areas, not just one area, a few different areas, okay? And then you need to say, okay, I've added a lot of value in this area, maybe a little less value in another area, but you also then need to look at what the potential value is. Because if you've added a lot of value in an area that doesn't have a lot of potential value, that doesn't have a lot of value in the future, you should not focus on it. Because that's where your returns will come from as a venture capitalist. But if you've added less value in another area, but the potential there is enormous, and your network might be smaller there as well, your track record not as good, but the potential is enormous, you might want to go after that. And I'm going to give you an equation in a moment on how to think about this. But your goal is to find that market segment where you've got the credibility and it's got the greatest opportunity, okay? And we've created an equation for you to think about this, because as I said, most of you will have opportunities in multiple market segments, in multiple areas, given your career, that you could launch a fund in. So then the question is, where should you launch the fund? Okay. And the first thing you want to think about is, for each area that you could launch a fund in, you want to think about how much value will be created in the next 10 years. Okay. So it's pretty clear that AI will create tens of billions of dollars, maybe tens of trillions of dollars of value in the next 10 years. Okay. So that has enormous potential, right? It's also pretty clear, fax machines won't, right? So don't do fax machines. But there's lots of different markets and sub-markets, because AI itself is a massive market. You want to start thinking about market segments. So tool sets within AI, APIs within AI, AI for healthcare, AI for SaaS, whatever. So you want to look not at the massive market, but you want to start looking at market segments. And how you figure this number out is not that hard. I mean, let me put it this way. If you're unsure how to figure this out, you probably shouldn't be working in that market segment, right? If you're like, God, I have no idea how to figure this out, then you have no business working in that market segment, right? Because if you have any experience, any track record, any credibility in a market segment, you will know the rough parameters to say, I know there are this many startups. I think there's a lot more startups coming out. Their valuations are like this. They seem to be growing. It seems to me like a good estimate is between like 5 and 7 billion, or whatever the number is, right? And that's the litmus test for you. If you can't figure out the value that might be created in the next 10 years, you probably don't have enough track record and experience in that market segment to be focusing on it with the fund. Okay. And by the way, if the value is not measured in billions, it's probably not a big enough market segment for you to focus on anyway. The next thing you need to think about, and again, this is something that only you can answer, is what is your personal addressable reach in that market, right? And again, you're going to have a pretty good sense of this, right? And if you don't have a good sense of it, you probably shouldn't be focusing on that market segment. Again, simple litmus test. If I can't figure this out for the life of me, it probably means you shouldn't be working on that market segment. My screen is flickering. Let me just adjust it here quickly. Sorry about this, guys. Hopefully I'll come back. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm back. Or at least maybe I didn't leave, but my screen left. So what does this mean? It's very simple. What percentage of the top founders do you know right now? And this is really your network measurement, right? So in some ways, the whole exercise is a track record test. If you can't answer these questions, you probably don't have a good enough track record to do it. Okay? So the whole thing is a track record test. This is a network test. How big is your reach in this market segment? And it's like, well, right now there's, 10 unicorns, and I, either know or kind of am acquaintances with, 5 of the 10. That would be big. Let's say 2 of the 10 unicorn CEOs. So that, those are the top founders. So that's maybe a 20% reach. So you gotta know who the top players are in the space, right? And then you've got to look at your network and say, how many of these top players are in my network? And if, you know, for many net people, it's going to be a fractional percent. Okay. Because the bigger the market segment, the less likely it is you're going to know the top founders, because they're just a lot of top founders. There, you know, tens of thousands of AI founders right now. What's the likelihood that you know many of them? Pretty small, because they're all around the world. So then you say, okay, well, if you chunk it down to a segment, you might know more. But again, it's such a big market that every segment's big, so you might not know that many. And this is a percentage, right? And then last but not least is like, how many of these firms are going to really have a big exit, right? The larger the market, the more firms there are going to be, and the less likely that any one firm is going to have a big exit. So it's sort of like a roulette board, right? For anyone who gambles roulette, there's a big thing of numbers, and you can place all kinds of different bets, but you can bet on numbers, you can bet on combinations of numbers. But a lot of ways, like venture capital is like roulette. You're betting on companies on a board, and a few of those companies get to be really, really big, and most of the rest either get acquired by the big companies or die, right? That's usually what happens. So if you're going after a market segment, like, how big is the board? Are there thousands of companies, hundreds of companies, 100 companies? And then how many of them are going to get big? And you can look at the past, you can make some estimates of the future. But again, if you don't know how to figure this out, you shouldn't be in the market segment, okay? Because this is kind of like, well, right now in this market segment, there's, you know, from what I see, there's probably a few hundred companies. I'm guessing there are more than that. In the past, you know, when the market was a little smaller, we were seeing about 1 in 50 getting to a really big exit. I'm guessing that will continue. So I'm going to say 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, whatever the number is there, will have an exit. All right. And then, by the way, it's pretty simple. What is your fund potential? Okay. Well, it's and I'll give examples. It's the value of the total market times the reach times the exit, and that gives you a number, right? So again, let's use an example here, something like AI, a segment in AI, right? So not all of AI, but a segment in AI, maybe like right now there's like GitHub tools for models like Hugging Face. So you could say, I think that model repositories are going to be a $500 billion market, right? For these reasons, right? I think that right now I know a lot of the people working to build these model repositories, but there's a lot of people doing it. So maybe my reach is 5% in the AI model repository world. I think when it's all said and done over 10 years, there'll be many, many model repositories, but maybe a few thousand, but only a few will get really, really big and get a big exit. So you multiply the $500 billion market size times your reach times the number of exits that might happen, and your fund doing this AI for model repository thesis may have $100 million outcome, right? And I would say that's a pretty good way that's a top down. There's bottom up ways to look at these numbers as well. But for you going into venture capital, right, you need quick ways to evaluate your different track records to see if that can create interesting funds, right? Quick ways. And this is a very quick way. Now, 100 million may not sound like a lot of money, but everybody, well, I mean, it does sound like a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money from a VC perspective, because a lot of fund sizes are $100 million. So if you did a $100 million fund size and you could only get 100 million in returns, that's terrible. But new managers working on fund one tend to have very small fund sizes, like 5 million or $10 million. So if you're doing a $5 million fund, you would get a 20x, a 20 TVPI. That's pretty good. If you did a $10 million fund, you'd have a 10x, and that's also really good. So actually, if you have a $100 million fund size, if you have a $100 million fund potential return, excuse me, and a $5 or $10 million fund size, this starts looking very attractive. Okay, but you know, AI is a big market. What happens if you go after, like, let's say, a smaller market, a more focused market? So if you're super well connected and you're going after a smaller market, let's say like games, you can also do very well. In fact, in many cases, the more focused your market segment is, the better your network is, and you can get, in some cases, better outcomes. So here, you've got a medium market segment like games. So you say, I'm going to go after game engines, because I think with AI and other tools coming out, new game engines will emerge, and it's going to disrupt the marketplace. And I think that's a $25 billion market, right? Because I work in it, I know blah, 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 and I know what these big players are today. I think there's a disruption that's happening, etc. I know all the people at the big companies working on these game engines. I know entrepreneurs starting game engines. I run the game engine community. I'm pretty confident that I have 25% reach into the founders starting interesting game engine companies today for these reasons. Okay, so you have big market reach. I think there are not going to be that many companies, maybe 100, that come out with these new game engines. Given what I know with the power law and everything else, maybe 2 will come out, 1 for mobile, 1 for desktop, maybe 3, 1 for platforms. And so we'll see about 1 in 50 exits, 2%. So you multiply that out, and you actually get to a bigger potential fund return here, right? So why I bring this up is because a lot of times, the more focused the market segment is, and therefore you might have much bigger reach, you can actually get bigger fund returns. So if you did a $5 or $10 million fund like you did before, except now you're going in a more smaller market, if you will, you can get better returns. So why I show you this equation is so that you can start thinking about what you want and need to do to go after the optimal market segment, given your track record, given your network, and you can create a vision to generate the most returns for limited partners or investors in your fund. Now, again, just to recap, your track record is your credibility and understanding of the market segment to create value. And again, you need track record to make the estimates that we were just talking about, because if you can't figure out those numbers, you probably don't have enough track record even to consider doing it. Okay? Your vision then is, again, how you're going to create value in that market segment. And your network is the access and the reach in the market segment to get the top founders. And so I do want to go through some specific things. So I'm going to go back to the different ones here and give you some pointers. I know I've gone a little long, so I'll do that for a few minutes and then I'll start taking questions, okay? So on track record, if you don't have the track record you need right now, this is very easy to fix, okay? Just get out there, right? Start posting articles on LinkedIn. Start commenting on things on Twitter. Start going to events and engaging. And then as you gain that experience, right, you can look at things to build your track record, like launching a community, making angel investments. I mean, if you want to start investing in this segment, you don't even need a lot of money today. There are platforms like AngelList where you can start investing under $10,000 per company, as little as $1,000, right? So you can really build your track record with things like starting, just getting out there, things like starting a community, and then even investing if you don't have a lot of money, because you can use tools where you don't need a lot of money to make initial investments, okay? On the vision side, we just went through this exercise to help you hone your vision, right? So identify the market segments that you have track record in and start doing these models and think about where the strongest opportunities to create value are. And you can do that right now, right? And then you might find, whoa, there's this one market segment that has the most interest, but my network and my reach is a little low. So you might say, well, I'm going to improve my reach to get the biggest opportunity. I'm going to go after that market segment. That's a vision exercise you can start right now. And if you find a market segment that you're going after with your fund, you have an obligation to start growing your network, because you're entering in a network business. So don't wait, start now, right? Go to events, host events, post, comment on posts. Building your network in a vertical, in a segment, is mission critical to your success as a venture capitalist. And you will need not only to do it now, you're going to need to do it for the foreseeable future, because that's what you do as a VC. You use your network to find deals, you use your network to help deals, you use your network to find limited partners. So you want to just immediately start building your network. And I'll be very, very clear with you. If your network size measured on LinkedIn is at, 1,000 or less, it's not a good, we're probably not going to accept you into VC Lab. Now, if you're with a team and you have some other members on your team that have a really good network, maybe. But, since network is so important to your success, the size of your network matters, the absolute size. And the focus of the network also matters. They both matter. Size matters and focus matters when it comes to your network. So you need to really work on both. Okay. Now we have gone a little bit long. So Niels, you want to come on screen? Thank you, everybody. Start getting your questions into the Q&A. We only have 5 questions now, but in my experience, by the end of this thing, we'll have many more questions than we can answer. So if you have any question at all, take a moment now, go to the Q&A button, and just start putting that question in, and we'll do the best to answer it. Now, we're going to do it by which questions are most upvoted as well. So let's get started, Niels.
Okay. Just quickly noting that we do need to end on time for this one. First question comes from Mesak. They're asking, what are some tips to facilitate growing your network with impactful, reputable, and resourceful professionals in your target market or venture ecosystem?
Yeah, so there are a lot. I mean, I brought a lot of stuff up. Obviously, going to events, posting, authoring original content, having a blog, creating a group or community. These are all ways to grow your network. But really, you also asked with people that are credible, right? And so resourceful professionals, right? That's a little bit different. So all the things I just brought up will grow your network. And obviously, you're going to probably do those things in the segment that you're interested in. So you're going to grow your network in the segment because you'll attend events in the segment, post on the segment, comment on the segment. But you also need to do some targeted networking to get to those resourceful professionals, the specialists, right? And to that end, you actually should research who the voices are in the market segment that you're interested in, and you want to comment on the things that they're doing. You want to look at the people who are following them, and to that, so that's more of a pinpoint networking where you're going after individuals, not general strategies. So you'll say, okay, I followed the big influencer in this network. Oh, I see that this person is always commenting on that influencer's stuff. Let me check out this person. Oh, that person is one of the leading, the CEOs of a leading company in the space. I should follow them and comment on their stuff too. So you want to start pinpointing critical people in the market segment. You want to follow them, you want to comment on their stuff, and you want to start sharing stuff that you're working on in their as comments to their stuff, so that you can start creating an awareness of who you are with those people, to the point where they may follow you back, and you start building that your own brand with those type of people in the network.
Somewhat similar question. What if you have never been in the startup ecosystem, or if you're new to it? What's an example of a good track record if you've never been in investment management?
Well, look, it's not investment management. So you need a track record in a market segment. And if you have, so let's unpack this a little bit. If you haven't been in the startup ecosystem, but you have been in like a banker or whatever, you might be a specialized banker for, M&A transactions in Latam. All right, well, then what are the most what's the type of M&A deals that you're doing, and are there a startup counterpoint, right? So you can take a track record in an unrelated field, see how it applies to startups, and then if you don't have enough experience to fill out the equation of the value, reach, etc., then you probably shouldn't be entering into venture capital. And I would recommend you do a program like the Venture Institute, where you can learn about venture capital first, and get started at a more basic level and up. To launch a venture capital firm, you have to have some track record that you can extrapolate into startups, enough so that you can fill out those equations and get good answers.
What are some of the most promising trends coming in the next decade?
Guys, look, that's not a question that can be answered.
Okay.
Because in every single market segment in the world today, there's going to be massive amounts of disruption. Everyone, Okay. Banking is being disrupted. Uh, Telecommunications is being disrupted. Automotive is being disrupted. Healthcare is being disruptive. So, like, what are the biggest trends? The biggest trend is the entire activity of humanity is getting rebuilt from the ground up right now for a lot of reasons. We're off path. We're not doing the things that are proper and right in the world. We're destroying our environment. We're destroying our habitat. We're killing our children, literally. So we gotta change everything, and everything is at this point kind of old and antiquated and not really where it is. So advents like AI are going to change everything, right? They're going to change every industry of humanity. Those industries need to be changed anyway, so everything is going to be disrupted.
So this sort of ties into that. Jeffrey is asking, what are your thoughts about emerging categories that have yet to materialize, such as spatial computing or as the target market segment?
Well, again, so those are referred to as blue ocean opportunities. If there isn't enough information today to make, for example, easy estimates on the total value created, etc., then you have to have the track record, the experience, and the knowledge to make those estimates on your own. And so when they're blue ocean opportunities, right? You don't, no one knows what the mark, but you're going to have to make a best guess based on your experience. Now, a lot of times these funds don't do very well, right? Sometimes they do really, really well, but a lot of times they don't do very well. And the reason is the managers don't get their estimates right. So you're deploying capital usually over 2 years with a fund. Call it 2 to 4 years. So if you make a lot of bets in the market over 2 to 4 years, but that market doesn't happen, and there's so many examples of this, like quantum computers have not happened yet. And if you had a quantum computer fund, you would be screwed, because there's no, tell me a giant quantum computer company. There aren't any, right? So, like, you could have made a lot of bets and you would have lost all your money. Interactive television from the 90s. Oh, they're going to interact with your TV and it's going to talk, like, that hasn't happened, right? Never happened. Tons of money went into it, never happened. So blue ocean opportunities, I'm not saying you shouldn't fund them, but when you need to be extra super sharp with your pencil on figuring out the numbers of the total market opportunity, or total value created over 10 years. And if you're really kind of pulling numbers out your butt that don't have a lot of defensibility, it's probably not a good area to start a fund, because it's just too risky. And funds are risky to begin with. You don't want to go in and be too risky.
How do you quantify the network? Does it include second and third degree connections on LinkedIn?
Um, I mean, look, it's possible. I would start with first degree connections, but I have an enormous network ish, like 34,000 or something like that on LinkedIn. So I probably am like first and second degree connections to a lot of people. But if you notice, I probably am like first degree connected to like tons of VCs and tons of founders. So what you want to do is start with first degree connections and see if you have that. If you don't have good depth in the market segment you're going after, then maybe look at second degree. I would not look at third degree. Third degree connections are not really connections, but second degree connections, definitely.
Um, What's the definition of value in the total value creation equation?
Value is the amount of that's a good question. So it's the amount of the valuation of the companies that are going to be created over 10 years. So valuation are synonymous. So if you think like, look, I'm looking at this, there's going to be this many companies created, they're going to have roughly this aggregate valuation. That's what that means. And I see like someone was asking like, what beyond 1,000 applicants, 1,000 or more. So if on LinkedIn, are criteria for your application to VC Lab. So your application to VC Lab has a lot of questions. We look at the size of your network, and 1,000 and below is the worst. So you really want to have thousands of connections of LinkedIn. And if you can get to tens thousand, that's even better. Okay. We look at how many LPs you know, how many deals you've done, because that's sort of also a measure of your track record. Plus, we look at how you describe your background and what your background is on LinkedIn, et cetera, because that's also a metric of your track record. So size of network's really important, and your track record's really important, okay? Then we look at, and that's why I'm talking about it here. Then we look at what your thesis is. How are you going to create value? And what do you need from the program to make your fund viable? So we look at, okay, what's your thesis? How are you going to create that value? What do you need from us? And if we think you have really a good vision to create value with a viable track record and a viable network, you get it. Right? So we're doing a rough analysis of those three things based on your application to admit you. We also care a lot about your video. If you don't come off professional on the video, we're not going to let you in, right? Because you're going to be pitching most of your limited partners through video. And if you can't look professional on video, it's unlikely that you're going to get limited partners to commit to your fund. And there's some other things, but let's go. We got more questions now, so let's move.
Okay. Any advice you'd give to your younger self?
That's not relevant to this.
Yeah.
No. Let's screen out questions. Let's talk about the subject matter. It's like,
I will.
if
Yeah.
you shaved your beard, what would happen? I don't know.
Okay. So how do you grow your track record if you're not an accredited investor? Would equity crowdfunding
No,
work?
I mean, equity crowdfunding doesn't tend to get good companies, guys. So you're not, you can do some investing on AngelList, I believe, if you're not accredited, but you need to check. I'm not entirely sure what their rules and policies are. But there are ways to invest if you're not accredited. Plus, the US is about to go out and do where you can fill out a form, take a test essentially to become accredited. But it's not just investing that's your track record, okay? As I said in the presentation, there are lots and lots of ways beyond investing to build track record. Investing is an important way, and in many ways, the most important way, but there are lots of other ways too. And there are tons of people that have successfully launched funds. In fact, some of our best funds, the people have not made a lot of investments, or in some case, no investments in the past, but they know they've domain experts. They're very, very good in a market segment, and they know all the founders, et cetera, and they've launched great funds.
Do VCs create a diversified portfolio within the segment they focus on? And would this be the right way to look at building portfolios?
So yes, you want to diversify for sure. You don't want to have 5 of the same companies in your portfolio, because that's like not smart, right? You want to invest in the company that you're pretty certain is going to win that sub-segment of the segment and then try and get other sub-segment bets in, right? Because you don't want all the same kind of company, because then they're also competing with one another and you're creating other conflicts of interest for yourself as a VC. So within a segment, you're going to be making sub-segment bets of companies that may be adjacent and even a little bit of overlap. But if they overlap too much, you have other issues with conflicts of interest. And there's like a question here from Emil: what is the LP sentiment? Look, the LPs are investing into early stage new managers at all-time high record rates right now from our data. Okay. The rest of market doesn't look very good right now. I don't really know why, but I know what I know. VC lab firms are raising more money than ever before from limited partners right now. All-time high. Millions and millions of dollars per day are being committed. Now, we have to jump off the line, everyone. And as I warned, tons of questions came in and we didn't really have time to get them because they came in the last like 5 minutes. There's if you put a link into the LinkedIn quickly, I will take questions that you post on the LinkedIn carousel with this presentation, Niels. If you post a question there, I will answer it on LinkedIn for you, today or tomorrow. Thanks everyone for coming. It's an amazing time right now to start venture capital firms. We need people starting firms to fund solutions to our global challenges. Hopefully you're one of them. Apply. We'll do our best to help you if we can. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful day.
I added a link. I'll also add it in the email.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.